You'll need to unmute.
Sorry about that. So today we'll be discussing exploring the literacy and numeracy. So we'll be discussing exploring the literacy and numeracy skills of adults in your state and county. And as was mentioned, I'm Emily Pawlowski, and my co-presenter is Alex Lesniak, and we're with the American Institutes for Research. So just an overview of what we'll be talking about today. We're going to go over what is PIAC, what are some major findings from PIAC, going over what the PIAC Skills Map is, what are the skills of adults in Minnesota, how the PIAC Skills Map can be used to inform your work, and where you can find the PIAC Skills Map and other information, and what is new and upcoming with PIAC. And also just to mention, I think Alex will put this link in the chat box. We have a newsletter, so you can sign up to receive additional updates on PIAC. So what is PIAC? PIAC stands for the Program for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies. So it's a cyclical large-scale assessment. It was first administered in 2011 to 2012 in 24 countries, and this includes the United States. So internationally, it is developed by the Organization for the Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD. And nationally within the US, it's coordinated by the National Center for Education Statistics, or NCS. So the goal of PIAC is to assess and compare the basic cognitive and workplace skills that are needed for participation in our today's society and the global economy. So in each country that participated, it was administered to a nationally representative sample of 16 to 65-year-olds residing in each country. So this means that people were selected irrespective of their nationality, whether they're actually a citizen of that country or speak the dominant language. So there have been 3 US national data collections within the cycle 1. So cycle 1 has used basically all of the same assessment and survey materials. So it's comparable across the different cycles or the different rounds within cycle 1. So total across cycle 1, which was administered between 2011 and 2017, there have been 38 countries or regions, including the US. But focusing specifically within the US, for the first round of data collection, the US collected a sample of adults and households ages 16 to 65, and there were around 5,000 adults in that first round of data collection. For the second round of data collection, we focused on some specific subgroups of interest. So this included unemployed adults and young adults ages 16 to 34. And we also expanded the sample to look at older adults ages 66 to 74. And that took place in 2014. And then our third round of data collection in the US was also around 3,600 adults. And this looked at a nationally representative sample of adults ages 16 to 74. So that's just an overview of what the US has collected for the PIAC so far. So within PIAC, there are 2 main components. So there's a background questionnaire that asks people questions about their demographics, their education, their employment, and a variety of other questions. And that is accompanied by a direct assessment of key information processing skills. So that's literacy, numeracy, and digital problem solving. And I'm going to go in more detail on these domains in a little bit. But first, looking a little bit more about the administration of PIAC, it's administered either on a laptop computer or a paper and pencil version, depending on the participant's comfort with computers, their experience and with computers, and whether they pass the basic core test of computer skills like clicking and highlighting. Will determine which version they get. As I mentioned, there's a background questionnaire that comes first within the administration of PIAC, and that lasts around 45 minutes, and that is conducted in either English or Spanish. And then after that, the assessment is administered, and that is conducted only in English, and it takes around 60 minutes. And the literacy and numeracy domains are both administered on either laptop computer or paper and pencil versions, while there's the digital problem solving assessment that's administered only on computers. So looking more closely at the assessment domains, literacy is understanding, evaluating, using, and engaging with written text to participate in society, to achieve one's goals, and to develop one's knowledge and potential. Numeracy is the ability to access, use, interpret, and communicate mathematical information and ideas in order to engage in and manage the mathematical demands of a range of situations in adult life. And then digital problem solving involves using digital technology, communication tools, and networks to acquire and evaluate information, communicate with others, and perform practical tasks. So basically, these domains kind of try to look at how these skills apply in people's real lives, in their work, in their home lives. And then the skill levels for these domains, they're reported either as average scores. So that means that they're reported on a scale of 0 to 500, or they're reported as proficiency levels. So this is the percentage of adults scoring at 6 performance levels, from below level 1 to level 5 in literacy and numeracy, and then at 4 performance levels for the problem solving domain. So that's from below level 1 to level 3. You can visit the NCS site for more description of the levels, but basically the levels are defined by the different types of tasks that adults at that level can do, going from basic skills to more advanced. And as you can see here, these are looking at the lowest level, lowest levels in literacy, so that's level 1 or below. These adults can range from functionally illiterate to those who have difficulty using or comprehending basic written material. The middle skilled adults at level 2 are nearing proficiency, but may still struggle to perform tasks using text-based information. While those at the higher levels in literacy, level 3 or above, these adults can work proficiently with information and ideas in text. So this is an example of a literacy item. So this is search results for a job hunt. So the test takers presented with these results from a simulated website. They're asked to identify a job that meets specific criteria. So which company is looking for an employee to work at night? And then the answer is explicitly stated in the stimuli, and around 95% of US adults can perform at level 1 or better. So this is a level 1 item that those types of adults would be able to complete successfully. So this is a little bit more difficult item. It's a level 2 literacy item. And here the test takers presented with a newspaper article on generic medicine, and they're asked to identify 2 reasons for the limited use of generic medicines. And here they need to identify the 2 reasons that are explicitly identified in the text. And there's more distractors here, and they have to not be distracted by reasons that generic medicines are cheaper. And around 82% of US adults can perform at level 2 or better. So now moving to the numeracy domain, here, similar to like the descriptions we saw for literacy, those at the lowest levels, level 1 or below, can range from functionally illiterate to those who have difficulty using and comprehending numeric information. Those in the middle level, level 2, are nearing proficiency, but they may still have some struggles working with numeric information. And those at the highest level, level 3 or above, these adults are proficient with mathematical ideas and information. So now just to go through some examples of numeracy items. This question is a level 2 numeracy item and asks how many gallons remain in the gas tank. And they're presented with this graphic that's indicating it's around 3/4 full. And the test taker is told the car holds 24 gallons of gas and it's asked to calculate a fraction of that amount. So they need to estimate that 3/4 of 24 gallons means 18 gallons remain in the tank. And here, so for numeracy, around 61% of US adults can perform at level 2 or better. So here's just a slightly more difficult item at level 3 in numeracy. That's looking at some running shoes on sale. And the test taker is asked to calculate the total amount one would need to pay for both shoes during the sale. So you need to calculate and enter the correct dollar amount based on the buy one pair get second for half price. And around 39% of US adults can perform at level 3 or better. So now that you have an idea of what's included in the assessment and how PIAC data is collected, I'm going to go over a few major findings from PIAC. You know, as I mentioned before, there were 3 rounds of data collection, but the 2014 data collection is not nationally representative on its own. So in our reporting, we used a combined 2012-2014 data to compare with the 2017 data collection to look at 2 points in time. So looking at 2017 compared to the 2012-2014 data, there was no measurable improvement in the skills of US adults across all of the 3 domains in literacy, numeracy, or digital problem solving. And then just a few other findings from 2017. So compared to the earlier.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't know how that happened.
It was just for a second. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So compared to the earlier data from 2012-2014, the average scores for Hispanic adults improved in both literacy and digital problem solving, but the average scores for white adults did not change across any of the 3 skill domains. And then the similar pattern was found for non-native born adults in the US. So they scored higher in both literacy and digital problem solving in 2017 compared to 2012-2014. While for native born adults, there was no change in their skills. And then looking at these 2 time points, the average adults amount of schooling has increased. So there were more adults getting above high school education, but there was a decrease in the average literacy and numeracy scores of those with only a high school education. So those with lower levels of education, their skills were declining in those areas. So looking at how the US is comparing internationally. So for the US adults, we're scoring higher in literacy compared to the international average. But for numeracy, they're scoring below the international average. And also for digital problem solving, they're scoring below the international average. So definitely the numeracy and digital problem solving domains, there's more concern in those areas compared to literacy. So if you're interested in finding more results from PIAC, we have additional national results and international comparisons in our web reports at the NCS website link there. And then also on our website, the PIAC Gateway that AIR coordinates, we have several ready-made presentations on the PIAC Outreach Toolkit section, and these include overview results on low-skilled workers, on health status and skills, on parental education and parents and non-parents, as well as some, I didn't mention this before, but there was a data collection in prisons during the second round of data collection. As well, and then we also have some additional sample PIAC tests if you're interested in learning more about the assessment. So now going into the PIAC Skills Map, this is the USPX Skills Map, which includes state and county indicators of adult literacy and numeracy. So this is an online tool and it provides comprehensive data on the literacy and numeracy skills of adults ages 16 to 74. And there's data for all 50 states in the US, the District of Columbia, and then for all 3,141 counties. So the data in the skills map, they are estimates for geographic areas where the survey data are not adequate for direct estimation. So it's because, as you saw, what the PIAC sample size is, it's not enough to have data from every county, but there's statistical methodology that allows us to create valid estimates for at the state and county level, and using this technique called small area estimation. And these estimates were produced using all of the PIAC data that the US has collected in 2012, 2014, and 2017, along with data from the American Community Survey, or ACS, from 2013 to 2017. So looking at the information that's available in the PIAC Skills Map, so there is literacy and numeracy proficiency data, so including average scores, as well as the percentages of adults at the lowest, medium, and highest levels for both counties and states. So those are the proficiency levels that I described earlier. The results are reported in the skills map at that level. And then in addition to those proficiency results, there's some accompanying demographic data from the American Community Survey, including items such as gender, race, employment, occupation, and so on, that provides context to the skills data. So now I'm going to hand it over to Alex to describe more on the skills map.
Thank you so much, Emily. So while I'm sharing my screen and getting that all set up, does anyone have any questions? I do see that there was some information being shared in the chat about the numeracy proficiency levels. So if anyone has any questions, if not, we can go ahead and get started. All right, so what are the skills of adults in Minnesota? So Minnesota is above the national average in literacy and numeracy compared to the nation, obviously. So the actual national average is 264, while the state average for literacy is 279. But this also holds true for numeracy as well, which is really nice to hear based on the statewide proficiency levels. So Minnesota has a lower proportion of low-skilled adults and a higher proportion of high-skilled adults compared to the nation. So just a brief overview is at or below level 1 is the lower skilled adults, middle is level 2, and higher level skilled adults is level 3 and above. And so it is good, and that's what we want to see, having a lower proportion of the low skilled adults and a higher proportion of the high skilled adults compared to the nation. So we'll go into this a little bit more later, but the circle is the smaller body of comparison and the triangle is the larger body. So if we're talking about county, it would be circle, and then the state would be a triangle. But since we're talking about a state right now, it's the state, and then the triangle is for the national data. And so, yeah, that's a pretty big jump between the national data and for the state as well. So it's definitely impressive. So I will be going into this a little bit more later as we look at the entire list of counties and their skill sets and their scores, but highest 5 performing, or the highest 6 in this case, counties in Minnesota by their average literacy and numeracy scores. So they are ordered by descending literacy scores, and the ones with the little superscripts are, for the number 1 is top 5 in literacy only, and for number 2, top 5 in numeracy only. And so, as you can see here, these counties seem pretty consistent in both their literacy and numeracy skills, as they are typically the top 5 of their class for that. But for the ones that were only in literacy or numeracy, they were very close to the top 5. It's just that they didn't make the top 5 for that. So as we see here, we have the lowest 5 performing counties, and you can see that's a big discrepancy from the 290s that you were seeing in the higher counties to the 262 that you see in the lower performing counties. So what I'll be doing now is I will be showing you a walkthrough for the county in Minnesota. So we picked Hennepin County because it's the most populous county in Minnesota, just so that we have a good sample. And can everyone see this? This all looks good?
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay, perfect. So welcome to the USPX Skills Map. It's an online tool that helps with all of these estimates and will help with policy making or ways to improve your local adult education programs. The options are endless for this tool. But basically, this is where you enter. This is the home screen, and it not only shows what you can do with the map, but it gives a description of how many adults were sampled, age groups, the years, and describing the 50 states, 3,141 counties, and the District of Columbia. So as you can see here, the map starts on the basis of showing you by default the county's level summary and in literacy, but you can use these toggle buttons to go to the state and also to go to numeracy. And so I'll describe what the shading means in just a minute after I go through some of the other things on the map. So the map filter here is really important, and it will be helpful when you're looking for your county or any other county. You can type it in, or you can try your hand at trying to manually find your county, but I find in counties where there's a lot of small section counties, it's a bit more difficult, so searching is good there. And here are the proficiency levels at or below level 1, at level 2, at or above level 3, and the average scale score. So as you see, as I was changing those proficiency levels, the shading was changing. What we're talking about with the shading is there's a little key in the bottom right here, and it shows the intensity of that proficiency or skill score. So if we're looking at or below level 1, the darkest counties are going to have the highest percentage of adults that are at or below level 1. So if you see a couple of these in Texas, but then if you look to a couple of these in Wyoming, there's not as many because the counties are lighter. So that's just something to consider moving forward, and we will be discussing that as part of our example. You can start by comparing counties, but you can also do that once you have looked at a particular county. It does allow you to do that. You can download data, and in the next few days, NCES will be releasing a user's guide for the data, and it's really helpful just to get a better sense of how you can use this and how you can apply this to your work. Over here, we've got a zoom in feature, and it zooms in pretty far if you keep clicking. I'll zoom out. This is a reset zoom, so if you've zoomed in too far, you get a little overwhelmed, you can reset it. It has keyboard actions and more information. If you hover over any of the little eyes on the beginning of the map, it shows more about each of those sections. And there's also a share map feature put in, which is really helpful, I think, to be able to share this information with colleagues, with friends, family. But you can share to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and you can also copy the link. So it gives you a lot to do. So I'm going to, since I didn't want it to take a while to load, I already have Hennepin County loaded up. And as you can see, compared to the average scale score of Minnesota, it's above the state average in both literacy and numeracy. So whenever you see an up arrow, that means it's above, down arrow meaning below, and if it's a dash, then it means that there's no significant difference between whatever you're comparing it with. So as you can see here, this map is It's very flexible. So if I wanted to potentially click on any of the other counties, it would switch to that county. So you wouldn't have to go back into the beginning of the map for being able to use that. You can also see where everybody is in relation to each other. So if you wanted to, for example, compare Hennepin with a neighboring county, you'd be able to see on the map there. So here is the results box, and it gives you kind of a numeric layout of the data. You can toggle see the state data, so you can see the comparison. So as you can see here, level 3 or at or above level 3 for adults in Hennepin County is 63% compared to the 57% from the state. So it is quite a bit higher. And you can see the average scale score as well. It also shows the results for numeracy. And if you are seeing this and you hover over estimate, it gives you the confidence interval, which basically just says that 95% of the chance of it's falling between 22 and 31% is 26. So just to give you a little bit of background there, there's a key at the bottom if you ever needed help. So it shows the at or below, at or above, and the county and the state data. And over here we have the analysis of results, and it is in it's more a verbal layout, which I find to be really helpful, especially if you're crafting a proposal or anything like that, and you're not super comfortable reading data. So it shows that Hennepin County has a population of 913,000. And according to the American Community Survey, which is where we get all of our demographic variables, this is really helpful to have the population data, because what you can do is if you were looking, for example, to find the number of adults in an area that needed basic adult education and literacy, you could multiply this at or below level 1 percentage of 13% by the population to get the number of adults that would be needing that assistance, which I think is really helpful just to put things in more contextual terms. But as you can see here, it's all written out, notably higher, notably lower, all of that language. You can also share this particular county card if you wanted to do so. And we have the options at the bottom. You can add variables, you can compare it to another county, and view the county chart. And so if we wanted to look at the county charts, which I think we should, it shows the entire comparison charts. And this is how I found the top 5 and bottom 5 within the state of Minnesota. So by default, it is set up to show the average literacy scores first, and then you go through all of the proficiency levels in literacy, and then it moves to numeracy. But as you can see here, there's more of a graphical representation and more of a written concrete representation if you have a hard time reading graphs. And so this is really helpful because you can look to see how your county is performing compared to other counties, and also to see which counties are kind of falling behind in terms of the average literacy scores, and maybe taking some inspiration from some of the higher scoring counties and seeing if they're doing something different you could potentially implement in those lower performing counties. It's really helpful to kind of think about it in those terms as well. So we're going to head back to the map though, just to show you a couple more features before we go through some examples. So you can compare it to another county, and you can compare it to a county in any other state, but beneficial to this presentation would be Minnesota. So just randomly pick our county, and you can see here the locations. And if you wanted to have the comparison be switched in the direction, so if you wanted Becker County compared to Hennepin County, you could use this little switch button in the middle. Or if you decided that you wanted to, for example, choose a different county, you could select the minus sign in the top right-hand corner. It's really helpful to be able to do that. And so as you can see here, the analysis of results is a bit different since they're comparing. So Hennepin County, when compared to Becker County, the average scale score estimate is notably higher in both literacy and numeracy in Hennepin compared to Becker. And there's no notable difference at or below level 1. It is statistically lower, so there are a smaller percentage of middle skilled adults in Hennepin compared to Becker, and there is a higher percentage of higher skilled adults in Hennepin compared to Becker County. So once again, you can select see state data toggles, and as you can see with the second county, they have introduced it with a square just so that all of the symbol use doesn't get too confusing. You can also add variables. So like Emily was saying with the American Community Survey, all of these are demographic variables, and you can select up to 8 in one analysis. I do have to mention though that it isn't broken down by skill level. So it's not that we can find the percentage of white adults at or below level 1. Unfortunately, it's just the makeup of the county. And additionally, we couldn't select all of these variables, for example, with it being white, less than high school, and foreign born, and you wouldn't find a subset of that population. So it wouldn't be white adults with less than a high school education or foreign born. It's all going to be taken into account separately, but it's still really interesting to look at. So we'll just show a couple of random ones. And they show up at the bottom. So you'll see the percentage of all of the variables that we selected and can kind of look around and see. So for Hennepin County, it looks like there's a much greater number of foreign-born adults compared to per county. And it's interesting to see that other levels are pretty similar, but a much higher percentage of white adults in Becker County compared to that. And so then if you wanted just to completely start over, you could hit new comparison, you can change your variables, and then you can view the Minnesota County chart, the little document that I showed earlier. And I can put a link for that in the chat if you want to go through that later. And that's also in the materials that we put on Sked. One last thing to note before we move forward is downloading data. I know I mentioned it briefly earlier, but it's really helpful if you wanted all of the data that's contained in this map. So all of the proficiency levels, all of the counties, everything that is located here, as well as the demographic variables. So that's really helpful if you are more data minded and really want to kind of go through it like that. So I'm going to head back to the presentation. And
Alex?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying we just got a quick question on the state to county comparison.
Yeah,
if you can
absolutely.
just show that quickly again, how you would compare a county to their state.
Perfect. Yes. So what you would do is you can click on this. If you searched Hennepin County, for example, and basically when you're doing a single county comparison, it'll automatically compare to the state of Minnesota. So it's only comparing to another county when you select that option. And hopefully that answers your question by selecting the single county.
Yeah, she got it.
Great. Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, great. So if there aren't any more questions, we will move on to the examples. So just a couple of questions and general questions that you can answer using the skills mapper. So what are the skill levels of adults in my state? What are my proficiency levels or average scale scores compared to neighboring counties? Things of that nature. It's really helpful just to be able to have those in the back of your mind. So for the first example, it's a very relevant example for the time being, considering we're still in the middle of COVID. And we are going to be examining which counties in Minnesota are likely to have more low-skilled parents who might have a hard time struggling to support their children's remote learning. And so that's a facet of the pandemic that I don't think people take into account that often, but with a lot of children going into the schools, not knowing how to potentially do their homework, and they're at home, they can't go in and have extra time with a teacher. So if their parents can't support that learning, that really is a detriment if you think about just moving forward and all of the developmental implications that that might have. So to answer this question, we are going to locate the lower performing counties in Minnesota using the map. So I will show you in a second. It'll be by the proficiency coloring. And we will select one of the counties and locate the percentage of adults at or below level 1 in literacy and numeracy. So as you can see here, the darkest counties at or below level 1 in literacy, you do not have a lot in the state of Minnesota. So it was kind of difficult to pick for this example. But you can see here with Nobles and Wantawan County. So for this example, we are going to pick Nobles County. We're just going to do a single county review. But like I mentioned in the walkthrough, you could easily compare these counties as they're pretty close in proximity and see if there's any differences there. So as you can see here, the percentage at or below level 1 is statistically higher compared to the state in both literacy and numeracy. So for Nobles County, it's 31% of adults at or below level 1 compared to 13% in the state, and 41% of adults at or below level 1 compared to 20% in the county, or in the state, excuse me. So that's a big jump. It's definitely a county that we would want to potentially look out for in terms of different support, extra time with different technology, that kind of thing, just to be able to make sure that we are best able to support all of the adults in our counties. And so it would potentially be helpful to also have more educational resources, such as more guidance and materials from the teachers or schools to assist in these online learning times. So another example is, would Lake of the Woods County, Minnesota be a good place for Red Lake County, Minnesota Community College to open a satellite campus? And so what we would want to be doing for this example is, this community college is located in Red Lake County, and they're looking to open a satellite campus. So they want to find an area with a similar skill level to them. And for the purpose of this example, we are going to be using level 2, so the middle skilled adults of PIAC. So to answer this question, we're going to compare these two counties on the percentage of adults at level 2 and literacy and numeracy, and see how well they compare. So just to give a little map of the state and just these counties, just to see proximity, so it wouldn't be too far out of the way to have this satellite campus, that kind of thing. And you would be comparing counties, but it also is helpful to see, if you select at level 2 and look at the efficiency level, which ones are the darkest. That's kind of how I developed these two counties for this example, but you could have picked any of them. So here is the analysis of results of Lake of the Woods County when compared to Red Lake County. So there's no notable difference in the average scale score in literacy and numeracy. There's no notable difference in percentage at or below level 1, at level 2, or at or above level 3. So this is a very good, I would say, comparison, just to see that the skills are very similar in these areas. So it wouldn't be too much of a jump in one way or the other to open a satellite campus in this area. So if we can zoom into the written text portion, it just says what I have mentioned, but the key thing to note there is that there's no difference for level 2 adults. And so it would basically just depend on what they would potentially be wanting to use the school for, if it was different courses, but they're pretty comparable in skill levels, so they would have a pretty easy time shifting over. On that note, I am going to stop sharing and give the control back over to Emily. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Alex. Okay, so I'm just gonna, I know we don't have a lot of time left, so I'll just quickly go over some of the benefits of the skills map. So for policymakers at the national level, it can help to draft policies that are based on science and valid data. At the state level, it can help with planning and priority setting, decision-making, allocation of resources. So as you saw some of the examples Alex went over, you can kind of decide what counties may need particular types of resources. And then at the local level, it can help compare with state estimates or with other counties to help understand the state of adult population skills and address gaps in education and training, and kind of see what counties are having high skill levels and what kind of policies they may be having. And then for the benefits for state and county education organizations and businesses, the skills map provides estimates at the performance levels that are not available from any other type of national study or survey. And then there are also provides access to additional variables for context on the status of the labor force and education within the state and county, which this then provides an information source to attract and justify funding. And then it also provides a planning tool for organizations or companies looking for employees with certain skill sets. So looking at where you can find the skills map and other information. So this is the link direct link to the skills map is at the bottom left. That will take you directly to the skills map. But then on the right, there's the link to the landing page, which provides the FAQs and tutorial videos and other summaries of higher and lower performing states and counties and so on. So that's a good resource for additional information. And then, as I already mentioned the PIAC Gateway before, but also on the Gateway, you will find the research and practice guides, which provide information on using the PIAC domains to inform lesson planning and curriculum development. We have infographics just to share some highlighted results from PIAC. There's a sign up, as I mentioned before, there's a sign up for the PIAC Buzz, so you'll get all the latest news about PIAC and anything else that's coming out. Like we have some upcoming webinars and presentations, so if you sign up for the Buzz, you can find information about those there. And then we have a previous webinar on the skills map that's been recorded, it's available there. And then there's a ton of other resources and all the latest news on PIAC available on the PIAC Gateway site. So in terms of what's new, we recently came out with a mobile interface for the skills map, so you can access all the capabilities and features of the skills map on your mobile device. Also, one other thing that is coming out very soon is we have a user's guide for analyzing the skills map data. I know we got a question on the standard deviations. So this user's guide that will be coming out that will provide more information on kind of how one may go about analyzing the skills map data, and or if you want to combine the skills map data with data from other sources at the state and county level, how the right way to go about doing that and analyzing the data. That should be coming out within the next few weeks. So also that will be announced in the Buzz and on the Gateway. So that's also a great place to go to access that resource. We also got a question on the next round of data collection for PIAC. So it's currently underway. We just completed the field test in the United States. So the data from the National International Cycle 2 of PIAC is scheduled to be released in 2024. I mean, there's been some delays related to COVID, and hopefully things will continue moving forward, but that's the current plan is 2024. And there's some new things going on in this new cycle of PIAC. We're going to have the first cycle of PIAC only included reading components, which is the lowest skills in literacy, but cycle 2 is also going to include numeracy components, so that will provide a better measurement of the lowest skills in numeracy. Instead of the digital problem solving, there's now a new domain called adaptive problem solving, which will kind of look at how people change to adapting situations and the way they solve problems. And then within the US, we're adding some background questions on financial literacy. So I guess if you guys have any other questions, we have a few minutes left. And then we also, if you guys have any thoughts on that you want to share and how the PIAC US Skills Map can be used to inform your work, feel free to share in the chat.
Great. And while we await any of those questions, I just want to thank Alex and Emily for coming all this way and sharing the data with us. Thank you. And
Yeah,
the
so I
resources
see
you've dropped in the chat. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I see we have a question on similar studies to cross-reference with these surveys. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what kind of measures you may be looking for. I mean, there's other school-based surveys that have been conducted internationally. I mean, but PIAC is pretty unique in that it is in its measure of adult literacy and numeracy and problem-solving skills. It's really the only survey and assessment that collects that at the national level. And then, yeah, any other questions? I think Alex put it in the chat too, but this is our contact info in case you have any other questions that come to you later, or as you're using the skills map, some questions come to mind.
And if anyone wants us to personally register them for the Buzz, you can directly email or personal message Emily or I, and we can take your email, or if you feel comfortable putting it in the chat, can put your name on the list for the newsletter that's coming out soon too.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for joining us, and thank you for our ASL interpreter as well. We appreciate all of your work. You have a little bit of a break before the next session, which is actually the vendor fair, and then our next concurrent session begins at 1 o'clock Central. Thank you so much, Emily and Alex.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.